through the day. You answered messages, handled responsibilities, stayed busy, and maybe even convinced yourself that you're okay. But now it's night, and suddenly the thoughts are louder, the loneliness feels deeper, and emotions you didn't even know you were carrying begin to surface. Why does this happen? Why do so many of us feel emotionally heavier after dark? In today's episode, we are going to explore the hidden psychology of nighttime anxiety, overthinking, loneliness, and the part of ourselves that only seem to speak when the world finally goes quiet. Hello, and welcome back to From the Therapy Room Psychology of Mind and Body, understanding how we think, feel, pattern, and become. I'm your host, Jyoti, a clinical counseling psychotherapist. I'm really glad you're here. You're welcome to follow this space and stay connected. This is a space where we gently explore the inner landscape of human mind, where psychology meets lived experience, and where the stories we carry inside finally find language. In this podcast, we explore the psychology behind everyday emotional experience, the things we often struggle to understand within ourselves. Let's get back to our episode. Have you noticed this about yourself that somehow you make it through the day, you function, you maybe even laugh, you make tea, attend meetings, respond to people, maybe even tell them I'm okay. And perhaps in that moment you even believe it. But then night comes and something shifts. The room gets quieter, becomes softer, notifications slow down, people disappear into their own lives, and suddenly your mind becomes louder. Your chest feels heavier. Memories you didn't invite beginning to show up. Conversation replay. Regret appears. Longing appears. Anxiety appears. A strange loneliness arrives. What is wrong with me? Why does this keep happening? Why am I fine during the day, but emotionally unravel at night? If this is you, I want to begin by saying something very gently. Nothing is wrong with you. What is happening makes profound psychological sense. And today, I want us to sit together inside this experience. Not to fix it immediately, not to rush it away, but to understand it. Because often what we call night anxiety is not simply anxiety. What we call feeling low at night is not simply sadness. Sometimes night is when the part of us we have abandoned finally get a chance to speak. Let's begin here. Daytime protects us. That may sound strange, but think about it. The day gives us structure, tasks, roles, identities, movement, noise, obligation, external stimulation. And all of these things, while necessary, can also function as emotional anesthesia. Not intentionally, not consciously, but psychologically. If your day is full enough, you do not have to hear yourself clearly. And for many people, that has become survival because what happens, actions disappear. What happens when there is no meeting to attend, no one to respond to, no list to complete, no performance to maintain, and no one needing anything for you? You meet yourself. And sometimes that meeting feels unbearable. Not because you are unbearable, but because what waits there has been waiting for a very long time. Maybe sadness, maybe grief, maybe longing, maybe fear. It could be unresolved anger or loneliness you have learned to outrun. Because many of us are not actually doing well during the day, we are coping efficiently. There's a difference, and this matters because functioning can look like wellness, but functioning is not always wellness. Some of the highest functioning people are profoundly emotionally exhausted. Some of the most productive people are deeply lonely. Most competent people are quietly unraveling, and night times remove the disguise. Have you ever had this happen? You're fine, totally fine. Then suddenly you're lying in bed thinking about something humiliating from 11 years ago, or a breakup you thought you had move on from, or someone who hurt you, or something you never said, or the life you thought you would have by now. And you think, why now? Because silence creates psychological space. An unprocessed emotional material fills empty space. This is one of the quiet truth of being human. And we suppress what we suppress does not disappear. It waits patiently, sometimes symptomatically. Day gives suppression somewhere to hide. Night removes the hiding places. And then feelings arise. Not because they are trying to destroy you, but because they are trying to metabolize. Your psyche does not create symptoms randomly. Your mind is not pushing you or punishing you. Your body is not betraying you. Something inside is asking to be known. Let's go a little deeper because for some people, this isn't just emotional backlog, it's nervous system physiology. And if this is you, understanding this may help you feel less frightened. All day long, your nervous system may be in performance mode, especially if you are someone who has had to be strong for a long time, especially if your childhood required vigilance, especially if emotional unpredictability shaped your nervous system. If you grew up in an environment where you had to read moods, anticipates reaction, stay prepared, be emotionally careful, then your body may have learned that alertness equals safety. So during the day, movement helps, busyness helps, doing helps, because action gives the nervous system direction, but nighttime stillness arrives. And suddenly the body says, now what? And what often emerges is not new anxiety, it is accumulated activation finally becoming noticeable. Your body finally gets a turn to speak. This is why some people say, I don't feel anxious until I try to sleep. That's important because sleep didn't create anxiety, health stillness revealed it. And then there's another layer, a deeply human one, loneliness. Night has a way of amplifying loneliness. Even when logically you know you're not alone, even when people love you, even when nothing objectively changed, because nighttime loneliness is often not about physical aloneness, it's emotional aloneness. And emotional aloneness can feel ancient. You may not be reacting to this specific night. You may be reacting to every night you felt emotionally alone before. Let that land. Because sometimes adulthood activates childhood without announcing itself. A grown adult lying in bed, feeling panicky, may think, this makes no sense, but emotionally, a younger part may be saying, no one comes when it gets dark. That changes everything. because then we are no longer just talking about insomnia or anxiety, we are talking about attachment memory. And attachment memory does not speak in logic, it speaks in sensation. Tight chest, restlessness, urge to reach out, fear, emptiness, dread, neediness. Not because you're weak, but your nervous system remembers. I want to ask you something. What was nighttime like in your childhood? Really? Not the practical details, the emotional atmosphere. What happened at night? Was bedtime safe or lonely? Did someone soothe you or dismiss you? Did conflict happen after dark? Did your parent fight? Did silence feel tense? Did you cry alone? Did you learn to self soothe too early? Or did you feel abandoned when the lights went out? Were you afraid? Were your emotional needs inconvenient? Because if nighttime once meant emotional uncertainty, your body may still associate darkness with vulnerability. And bodies remembers what minds forget. This is one of trauma's quiet language. It doesn't always show up as flashbacks. Sometimes it shows up as unexplained dread at 11 a.m., or an irrational need to text someone, or scrolling endlessly because silence feels threatening, or sudden tears, or strange emotional collapse after being fine all day. Let's talk about the urge to reach out because so many people experience it. Daytime, I'm okay, and nighttime, should I text them? Even them hurt you. Even if you know it's not wise. Even if you promised yourself you wouldn't. Why? Why? Because night activates attachment hunger. And attachment hunger is not always about the actual person. Sometimes the person becomes symbolic. Not them specifically, but what they represent. Comfort. It could be, like comfort, witnessing, regulation, connection, relief from emotional aloneness. Regulated, we often make, we often mistake emotional rescue for rational truth. That's why nighttime can make old relationship feel magnetic. Not because they are healthy, because vulnerability seeks familiarity, even painful familiarity. And this become even more intense if you have anxious attachment pattern. Because anxious attachment often carries a deeply painful internal belief. If I am alone with my feeling, I may not survive them. Or something like, if no one responds, maybe I don't matter. Or connection must be pushed urgently before it disappears. So night magnifies these beliefs because darkness removes distraction and the attachment system becomes louder. You may think, why am I suddenly obsessed? But what often happening is not obsession. It's attachment activation. That distinction matters because shame makes suffering worse. Stay here for a moment because what many people call overthinking is often something far more emotionally sophisticated. It's not always random thinking, it's often an activated inner system trying to restore safety. The mind starts scanning, reviewing, replaying, predicting, analyzing, trying to solve, trying to prevent pain before it arrives. And because this happens in the form of thoughts, we assume the problem is thinking, but often thinking is just the surface behavior. Underneath there is fear, longing, helplessness, uncertainty, attachment distress. The thoughts are not the wound, they are the coping strategy. that changes how we understand ourselves. Because then the question becomes not why do I overthink so much, but why is my mind trying to protect me from feeling? This is much kinder question and a much deeper one too. For some of you, nighttime doesn't just bring anxiety, it brings emptiness, a strange hollowness, a feeling that is harder to name. Not panic exactly, not sadness exactly, just absence, a quiet ache. And this can feel frightening because emptiness often feels meaningless. But psychologically, emptiness is rarely empty. Emptiness is often dissociated longing, unfelt grief, suppressed need, unlived selfhood. And the humanistic psychologist spoke beautifully about this, about the pain of becoming disconnected from one's authentic self. And what happens when we spend years becoming who we needed to be instead of who we truly are? And night can become the hour when the hidden self begins whispering, is this really my life? Where did I go? Why did I feel so far from yourself? I mean, these are not pathological questions, they are existential ones. Painful, yes, but deeply human. Because functioning and fulfilling are not the same thing. Performance and meaning are not the same thing. Achievement and aliveness are not the same thing. And some people only hear this discrepancy at night because daylight keeps identity stabilized, night destabilizes performance. And what remains is self encounter. Now, I want to move somewhere deeper into Jungian territory because this topic belongs there. Carl Jung believed that much of what disturbs us comes not from what we know about ourselves, but from what we do not allow ourselves to know. The shadow, not evil, not monstrous, simply the disowned self. The rejected emotions, the unacceptable needs, the anger we swallowed, the grief we minimized, the envy we judged, the dependency we denied, the desire we suppressed, the tenderness we hid, the exhaustion we performed over, and the version of us that never got permission to exist. And daytime. Daytime helps us maintain the socially acceptable self, the the functioning self, the competent self, the composed self, the pleasing self, the productive self. But night softens ego control. And what has been pushed away starts moving closer. This is why some people feel emotionally haunted at night because darkness is psychologically symbolic. Darkness is where unseen become visible. Not because darkness is dangerous, but because darkness reduces distractions. And the psyche become audible. And sometimes what we call nighttime anxiety is actually shadow material asking for integration. For example, if you spent your life being the strong one, night may bring tears. If you spent your life suppressing anger, night may bring agitation. Or if you spent your life disconnecting from longing, night may bring aching desire. If you spent your life performing okayness, night may bring collapse. And if you judge what emerges, you deepen the split. Because healing requires curiosity, not rejection. I want to say something that may feel strangely comforting. Not everything that surfaces at night is a problem. Some of it is truth too. Not all distress is dysfunction. Sometimes Distress is revelation, painful revelation. Yes, but revelation, the life has no longer fits. The relationship that drains you, the grief you never finished, the self you abandoned, the need you were taught to feel ashamed of, the loneliness beneath busyness, the fear beneath perfectionism, the exhaustion beneath competence. And if this resonates, I want to say gently, what emerges at night may not be there to destroy your peace. It may be there because your psyche is asking for honesty. But let's go even more intimate because some of you are not just meeting emotions at night, you're meeting younger part of yourself. The inner child language gets used casually these days. The trendiness, there is something profoundly real. Parts of us remain emotionally frozen in moments where our needs were not met. The adult self continues chronologically, but emotionally. Some experience may unfinished. A younger part may still carry fear of abandon, fear of rejection, fear of emotional neglect, fear of being too much, fear of being unseen, fear of needing comfort. And night times only activate these younger states because children are especially vulnerable at night. Darkness, separation, silence, dependency, imagination, helplessness. Night naturally evoke regression, which means adult emotional states can suddenly feel younger than they appear. This is why you may intellectually know I am safe, but emotionally feel I need someone. Those are different nervous system realities. Let me offer you a possible inner dialogue that may be happening unconsciously. Adult mind will say something like this: this is ridiculous, go to sleep. And your younger emotional self will say, but what if something happens? And adult mind will say, you are overreacting. And then younger will say, please don't leave me alone with this. Adult mind will say, why am I like this? And younger self will say, because no one taught me how to feel safe. Can you feel the tenderness here, there? Because many people are waging war against frightened younger parts without realizing it. And the harsher we become internally, the more activated those parts become. There's another layer here: the collapse after performance. This is especially true for caregivers, therapists, parents, leaders, helpers, professionals, emotionally responsible people, people who hold others together. When your identity is built around regulation, night becomes the hour when the emotional bill arrives. Because holding yourself together all day costs energy. Even emotional suppression costs energy. But composed cost energy, being fine cost energy, and being available cost energy. And when the system finally stops, fatigues lowers defenses. The emotions flood in, which can create the illusion. Night makes me worse. But sometimes the truth is, night reveals how depleted I already am. That's profoundly different. Comes existential loneliness, a different kind of loneliness, not relational exactly, existential. The loneliness of being human, the strange ache of conscious itself. Question like, what I'm doing with my life, who really knows me, or what if this never changes, or what if I am fundamentally alone. These thoughts often emerges at night because nighttime naturally invites confrontation with impermanence. And stillness makes mortality louder, silence make meaning louder. And if you have been outrunning existential question, night can feel psychologically merciless, but perhaps not merciless, perhaps honest. Some experiences ask to be understood with more reverence than pathology, and nighttime suffering is often one of them. Because if you ever been awake at 2 a.m. feeling emotionally raw, you know this experience can feel strangely primal, almost ancient, as though something older than language is moving inside you. And in many ways, that's true because not everything happening at night belongs to cognition. Some of it belongs to the body, some of it belongs to memory, some of it belongs to attachment, to grief, and some of it belongs to your soul. People underestimate how much psychological experiences in physiological experiences. I mean, you may think I'm thinking myself into anxiety, but often the sequence is reversed. Your body shifts first, then the mind creates a story to explain the sensation, a subtle chest tightness, a flutter, a restlessness, a drop in regulation, a heaviness, a hollow sensation, an activated heart. And then the mind asks, why do I feel like this? Brain dislikes uncertainty. It begins searching, scanning, finding explanations, generating worries, revisiting unfinished emotional material. So what appears to be overthinking may actually be interpretation layer over activation. This is why arguing with thoughts sometimes doesn't work because the thoughts are downstream. The nervous system spoke first. And if your body has known stress for years, this become even more relevant. Chronic emotional strain changes baseline physiology. The body learns vigilance. The nervous system becomes quicker to metabolize. Safety becomes harder to access, and stillness becomes unfamiliar. And unfamiliar often gets interpreted as unsafe, which is why some people compulsively reach for stimulation at night. Phone, scrolling, video, messaging, background noise, checking, refreshing, not because they lack high discipline, because silence feels emotionally exposing. Let's be compassionate here, please. Because compulsive nighttime scrolling is often self regulation. Imperfect self regulation, yes, but self regulation. A nervous system saying, please give me something external to organize around. Because inward contact feel overwhelming. And the tragedy is people then shame themselves. I have no control. Why am I doing this again? I'm pathetic. But shame never soothes an activated nervous system. Shame intensifies dysregulation. Compassion creates possibility. And then there is the reaching out, the late night text, the urge to check if someone is online, the sudden emotional dependence, the longing for one reassuring message, one sign, one response, one proof you matter. This is deeply human, especially if human regulation historically came through other people. If you were never taught how to co regulate safely, or if regulation was inconsistent, the adult nervous system may still urgently seek external anchoring. And night magnifies that urgency. Emotional isolation amplifies attachment needs. Someone can feel completely self sufficient at 2 p.m. and desperately needy at midnight. Not because identity changed, because emotional state changed. State shapes perception always. A dysregulated nervous system tells a different story about reality. That's why nighttime thoughts feel so overwhelming and convincing too. Now let's take another stance to the spiritual and philosophical dimension here. Let's just go a little deep here because this is a way to understand night that is not merely clinical. Night has always symbolized encounter. Mystic news knew it. Philosopher knew this. Depth psychology knew this. The dark night is archetypical. Not because darkness is evils, because darkness removes visual certainty and humans depend heavily on certainty. Night asks surrender, and surrender can terrify a psyche built around control, especially if control once kept you safe. This is why some people do not fear nighttime itself, they fear the loss of control that night times evoke. The, the inability to stay defended, the inability to keep moving, the inability to distract. And beneath that, the fear of encountering truth. Because what if in stillness you hear what you have avoided? The grief, the longing, the emptiness, the resentment, the unlived dream, the relationship truth, the body exhaustion, the soul hunger that can feel terrifying, but also deeply clarifying. Because perhaps some suffering is not punishment, perhaps some suffering is invitation. Not all discomfort is dysfunction, some discomfort is awakening. Now be careful here. I'm not saying all suffering is spiritually meaningful, not nor that pain should be romanticized, but I'm saying sometimes your night distress is not merely malfunction, sometimes it is neglected truth surfacing. And truth often feels destabilizing before it feels liberating. Let's talk about something painful, the unlived self, because I suspect for many listeners this is part of the ache. You did what was expected. You become responsible, adaptable, capable, functional. You learn what earned love, what reduced conflict, what made you acceptable, and perhaps over time you became highly skilled at living a life that works externally, but internally something remains untouched, unexpressed, unchosen. And night asks, what about me? The creative self, the grieving self, the sensual self, the playful self, exhausted and honest self, angry, dependent, and a spiritually hungry self. The self that wanted something different, the self that never got consulted. This ache can masquerade as anxiety, but sometimes it is existential mourning, grief for unlived life. And the grief deserve language because otherwise it becomes symptoms. Let me speak directly here. You, maybe this is you. Maybe you're not anxious. Maybe you are lonely in ways you have not admitted. Maybe you are exhausted beyond what your functioning suggests. Maybe you're carrying grief with no ritual. Maybe you miss someone. Maybe you miss yourself. Maybe you are terrified of your own needs. Maybe you learn that needing masks makes you weak. Maybe nighttime is when you disowned humanity returns. And maybe what hurts is not the darkness, but the intimacy of finally hearing yourself. Can I say something gently here? You're not failing because you feel more at night. You're becoming more psychologically audible. That's different, very different. Now, how do we begin healing this? Not by fighting the night, not by attacking your mind, not by shaming your attachment needs, not by demanding emotional perfection. Healing begins with relationship with yourself, with your nervous system, with your emotional truth, because the frightened parts inside do not need punishment, they need contact. Let me put it in this way, that I would want to sit with someone in therapy, not by asking, how do I stop feeling this, but by asking, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Because the relationship you have with your inner world changes everything. It's if every difficult feeling become an enemy, your nervous system learns that distress equals danger. But if difficult feelings become signals, something softens, curiosity enters, compassion enters, meaning enters, and healing becomes possible. So, what do we actually do when night becomes emotionally hard? Let's walk slowly, not like a checklist, like a companionship, because what hurts at night often needs gentleness, not optimization. Try to name what is happening. Sometimes the mind creates frightening, vague narratives because the emotional experience feel undefined. You can say this is anxiety, or this is loneliness, or this is emotional exhaustion. Anything. Naming create containment because unnamed distress feel infinite. So named distress become experience, not identity, just experience, temporary, human, and movable. Ask yourself what happened before this, not just externally, internally. Did you suppress emotion all day? Did you overperform? Did you caretaking all day? Or what did you do actually all day? So, because many people think night distress appears out of nowhere. Rarely true. Usually, there is an emotional context. Speak differently to yourself. Another thing which you can do, if your inner dialogue is, what is wrong with me? Your nervous system hear dangers. Try, something inside me is distressed, or a part of me needs soothing. This makes sense given what I carry. I mean, that's not indulgence, this is reparenting, because many people internally speak to themselves exactly how frightened children should never be spoken to, harshly, dismissively, impatiently, and then wonder why distress escalate. Imagine saying to a frightened child, stop this nonsense. Does safety increase? No. Same internally. If you want to reach out, pause and ask what you actually need. This is important because the urge may say text them, but the deeper need may be comfort, co regulation, reassurance, witnessing, touch, connection, safety, not abandonment. And if you understand the need, you have more option. Otherwise, you compulsively seek symbols instead of care. Sometimes you do need connection. It's human, but sometimes you need soothing, not a specific person, and that is important. Try to regulate your body before negotiating with your thoughts. If your younger part is activated, speak to them. I know this may sound unusual to some listener, but psychologically, it can be deeply repetitive. I know night feels hard. I know this reminds you of old loneliness. I'm here now. You can try these things. This is not imagination, this is emotional integration. Because healing often means becoming internally available in ways others once were not. Night changes perception, fatigue changes cognition, and loneliness changes interpretation. Activation changes certainty, which means not every thought deserves belief. What is not always the final truth. Like no one cares, so my life is ruined, and I will always feel like this. I need to fix this immediately. Just pause, and a state shapes narrative. Morning often tells a different story. Now, I want to say something to those who feel ashamed, those who think I should be stronger by now. Please hear me. Your night suffering is not proof of weakness. Sometimes it is a proof of how long you have been holding too much. Sometimes nighttime collapse is what happening when highly functional human finally stop performing. And honestly, there is a tenderness in that because the breakdown is often not dysfunction, it is accumulated humanity. And to the person who feels unbearable lonely at night, I want to speak directly to you. Your longing does not make you needy in shameful sense. Humans are attachment beings. We are wired for connection. The wound is not that you need comfort. The wound may be that comfort once felt unavailable. That's different, very different. And if night awaken the ache, please know you're not strange. You're touching something profoundly human. To the overthinker, maybe you're not crazy. Maybe your mind becomes hyperactive because uncertainty once felt dangerous. Maybe analysis becomes safety. Maybe prediction become control. Maybe thinking becomes self-protection, and that deserves understanding, not ridicule. Emotionally numb person, if you feel emptiness instead of anxiety, I see you too. Sometimes emptiness is what grief feels like when in the it has frozen. Sometimes emptiness what chronic adaptation feels like. Sometimes emptiness is the emotional cost of becoming whoever you need to become to survive. Emptiness is not absence of death. Often it is compressed depth. And listening right now in the dark, or maybe in the light, maybe with tears, maybe with your phone brightness turned low, maybe after checking someone last seen, maybe after trying to distance yourself for hours, or maybe feeling ridiculous for hurting this much. I want to sit beside you for one moment and say this: failing. You're not broken. You're not weak, and this experience make more sense than you think. Because perhaps what arrives at night is not pathology. Perhaps it is postponed feeling, unheard memory, attachment ache, body memory, suppressed grief, existential loneliness, the shadow asking for recognition, or simply a nervous system has no longer knows how to soften alone. And all of that is workable, not because it's easy, because it is understandable. Maybe the question was never why do I feel worse at night. Maybe the deeper question is what becomes audible when the world goes quiet. And perhaps what you hear is not something to fear. Perhaps it's something asking finally to be met with gentleness, with honesty, with curiosity, with compassion, with presence. And if tonight is one of those nights, take a breath with me. Not to make the feeling disappear, just to remind your body, I'm here, I'm here. One more time, I'm here. And sometime that is where the healing begins. This has been from the therapy room, Psychology of Mind and Body. If this resonates with you, you can share what you felt or noticed. I would love to hear your reflections. And if you find these conversations meaningful, if this conversation felt like it was speaking directly to your inner world, please share this episode with someone who might quietly need it. Because so many people live inside this pattern silently. And if you enjoy psychologically deep therapy room style conversation about healing, relationship, trauma, anxiety, attachment, and emotional well being, follow the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. I'll meet you in the next conversation. Take gentle care. Until next time, take care of your mind, your body, and quiet spaces within you. Next time, I'll be sitting next besides to you. See ya.